If you have never smelled 15,000 gallons of industrial-grade epoxy resin curing in the middle of a suburban heatwave at 2 o'clock a.m., let me paint you a sensory picture. It smells like a chemical plant made love to a nail salon, and then that nail salon caught on fire. The heat coming off my backyard was enough to distort the air. Literally. You could see the heat waves shimmering in the floodlights, twisting the visual of my hydrangeas into Dali paintings. I stood in the driveway, wearing pajama pants and a World's Okayest Angler t-shirt, watching the chaos unfold. My driveway looked less like a residential home and more like a federal disaster response site. There were 3 police cruisers, their red and blue lights bouncing off the vinyl siding of my neighbor's house. There was a massive tanker truck, the kind usually reserved for hauling jet fuel or hazardous waste, parked diagonally across my lawn, its diesel engine idling with a low, earth-shaking rumble. And then there was Brenda. Brenda is the president of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association. She was standing by the mailbox, wrapped in a floral bathrobe that I'm pretty sure violates the HOA color palette guidelines, screaming at a police officer. "It is toxic waste!" Brenda shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at my backyard. "He is cooking meth! Or building a bomb! Look at the steam! Look at the fumes! My eyes are burning, officer! Arrest him!" The officer was Officer Miller. We knew each other. Not socially, but professionally. Our profession being, Mike does something technically legal but incredibly annoying, and Brenda calls 911. Miller sighed, the heavy sigh of a man who was 3 years away from a pension and currently wondering if he could fake a sudden illness to leave the scene. He walked over to me, adjusting his belt. The blue strobe lights washed over his exhausted face. "Mike," Miller said. He didn't ask, "What's going on?" He just said my name. It was a statement of defeat. "Evening, Officer Miller," I said, taking a sip from my coffee mug. It was whiskey, but the mug said coffee, so I felt that kept things professional. "Lovely night for a pour." "The neighbors are complaining about the smell, Mike," Miller said, thumbing toward the tanker truck. "And Brenda is convinced you're creating a Superfund site. What is that truck pumping into your swimming pool? And be honest, because if I have to call the hazmat guys, I'm going to be very upset." "It's not toxic waste," I said, raising a hand. "It's resin, 2-part epoxy, specifically a deep pour formula used for river tables and industrial flooring, totally inert once it cures." "Why?" Miller asked. Just one word. "Because of the koi pond," I said. Miller stared at me. He blinked slowly. "The koi pond?" "The one Brenda denied last month?" "The very same." "So, you're filling your swimming pool with glue?" "Resin," I corrected. "And it's not just resin. It's art. It's a hardscape installation." Suddenly, a man in a Tyvek hazmat suit and a full-face respirator burst through my side gate. This was Tony. Tony was my contractor. Tony looked like he was ready to fight a contagions outbreak in a sci-fi movie. He ripped off his mask, revealing a face slick with sweat and eyes wide with manic panic. "Mike!" Tony yelled, ignoring the cops. "The exothermic reaction is peaking. It's kicking off faster than I thought. The ambient temp is too high. If we don't mist it down, the surface is gonna crack. I need the hose." "He's destroying evidence," Brenda screamed from the sidewalk. "He's flushing the drugs." "Tony, calm down," I said. "Officer Miller, this is Tony. He's a certified flooring specialist. Tony, tell the officer we aren't cooking meth." "Meth?" Tony looked at the cop, then at the tanker, then back to me. "Who cooks meth in a $30,000 custom pour? We're making a faux oceanic floor. But seriously, Mike, the heat coming off that pool is like an oven. It's gonna flash cure if we don't watch it." I looked at the audience. Well, metaphorically, at the universe, and smiled. You're probably wondering why I'm turning my swimming pool into the world's largest, hottest paperweight at 2 in the morning, while my HOA president tries to have me arrested for domestic terrorism. It's a valid question, and to answer it, we have to go back 8 weeks, to 3 goldfish, a dream of tranquility, and a very, very rude email. It started innocently enough. I work in high-frequency trading. My days are filled with screaming, numbers, flashing red lights, and cortisol spikes that could kill a rhino. When I come home, I want silence. I want peace. I want to look at something that isn't a graph. I decided I wanted a koi pond, not a lake, just a small, tasteful, Zen-inspired water feature in the corner of my backyard. I pictured myself sitting there with a cup of tea, watching the fish glide around, feeling my blood pressure lower to human levels. I did everything right. I hired a landscape architect. We drew up plans that were beautiful. Slate rocks, a small waterfall, a high-end filtration system so silent you could hear a pin drop. It was going to be tucked away behind the rhododendrons, invisible from the street, invisible from the neighbors. I filled out the Architectural Modification Request Form, AMR 4B. I attached the blueprints. I attached the contractor's license. I even attached a color swatch of the rocks. I submitted it to the Whispering Pines HOA portal on a Tuesday. I got the rejection on Wednesday morning. Usually these things take 30 days. The speed of the rejection was my first clue that this was personal. I opened the email. From Brenda Hioe, press at Whispering Pines. Org. Subject, denied. Project 8922. Fish Pit. Dear homeowner, your request for a Zen water garden has been denied effectively immediately. Reasoning. Per Article 4, Section 2 of the Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions, CCNRs, no auxiliary bodies of water, ponds, fountains, or bird baths exceeding 5 gallons are permitted due to the risk of attracting vermin, mosquitoes, and unauthorized wildlife. Furthermore, the acoustic uniformity of the neighborhood must be maintained. The sound of trickling water creates a deviation from the standard ambient noise levels and may induce the urge to urinate in older residents. Do not resubmit. Sincerely, Brenda. I stared at the screen. Induce the urge to urinate? Was she serious? I didn't let it go. I went to the monthly meeting that Thursday. The meetings are held in the community center, a room that smells of stale coffee and power trips. Brenda sat at the head table, gavel in hand, looking like a judge who specializes in sentencing people to misery. I waited until the new business section. I raised my hand. Mike, Brenda sighed, not even looking up from her notes. If this is about the fish pit, the answer is no. It's a koi pond, Brenda, I said, standing up. And the bylaws say standing water. My design has a flow rate of 2,000 gallons per hour. It's not standing, and mosquitoes can't breed in moving water. Brenda looked at me over her rimless glasses. The board has discretion, Mike. We decided that fish are vermin. Fish are vermin? I repeated. They live in water. They don't leave the water. Unless you're worried about a land shark evolution event, I think the neighborhood is safe. It attracts raccoons, Brenda countered. So do your trash cans, Brenda, but we don't ban those, I shot back. A few neighbors chuckled. Big mistake. Brenda's face went tight. The ruling stands, she slammed the gavel. If it holds water and isn't a swimming pool, it is banned. Read the bylaws, Mike. No non-pool bodies of water. Period. End of discussion. Next. I sat down, fuming. If it isn't a swimming pool, I looked at my backyard when I got home. I had a swimming pool. A kidney-shaped, chlorine-guzzling money pit that came with the house. I hated it. I spent more time balancing the pH levels and skimming dead beetles out of it than I ever did swimming. Brenda's voice echoed in my head. No non-pool bodies of water. I poured myself a drink and opened the HOA rulebook PDF on my laptop. I hit Ctrl plus F. I searched for pool. I searched for water. And then I searched for hardscaping. And there it was. The loophole. The holy grail of malicious compliance. The language in the CC&Rs was surprisingly specific, yet fatally flawed. Article 9, Section C. Landscaping versus hardscaping. Landscaping, grass, shrubs, mulch, must comprise at least 40% of the rear yard. Hardscaping, patios, decks, walkways, decorative artistic installations, and solid surfaces may cover up to 60% of the rear yard. Okay, hardscaping includes decorative artistic installations and solid surfaces. Then I checked the definition of a pool. Article 12, Section A. A swimming pool is defined as a vessel designed to hold water for the purpose of recreation. My brain started connecting the dots like a constellation. If the vessel does not hold water, it is not a pool. If I fill the vessel with a solid material, it becomes a solid surface. Therefore, it becomes hardscaping. I didn't want a pool. I wanted to look at water. I wanted the aesthetic of the ocean, without the maintenance, the chlorine, or the vermin allegations. The idea hit me at 3:00 a.m. What if I filled the pool? Not with dirt, but with something clear. What if I turned the entire 25,000-gallon depression in the earth into a massive solid block of amber? I could create a scene, a frozen moment in time. I spent the next 3 days in a fever state. I researched epoxy resins. I learned about deep pour versus tabletop formulas. I learned about exothermic reactions. More on that later. Then I went shopping. I didn't go to PetSmart for gravel. I went to a high-end aquarium supplier in the city. "Can I help you?" the clerk asked. He was a teenager named Kyle, who looked high. "I need sand," I said. "White sand, Caribbean quality." "For what size tank? 50 gallons?" 25,000 gallons, I said. Kyle stopped chewing his gum. "Bro, I need 2 tons of white silica sand. I need 300 pounds of polished river stones. I need driftwood, large pieces, like whole logs. And do you sell decorative seashells?" "We have conch shells," Kyle said slowly. "I'll take them all. And give me the giant clams, and the fake coral, the expensive stuff that looks real. I need enough to cover a floor roughly 20 by 40 feet. The credit card bill was astronomical. It was enough to buy a decent used car, but the price was irrelevant. This was about sending a message. I went home and started drafting my new plan. I didn't call it a pool. I didn't call it a pond. I created a binder with a laminated cover. Project Atlantis, a postmodern sub-aquatic hardscape installation. I didn't submit it to the HOA. Why? Because according to the bylaws, hardscaping modifications that do not alter the grade of the land or exceed fence height do not require board approval. I wasn't altering the grade. I was filling a hole. I was technically making the yard flatter. Now I just needed someone crazy enough to help me do it. Finding a contractor was the hardest part. I called 5 pool companies. "You want to fill the pool with what?" the first guy asked. "Epoxy resin," I said. Click. The second guy laughed until he choked. The third guy told me it was illegal, it wasn't, and that I was insane, debatable. Then I went to Craigslist. I searched for industrial flooring, garage epoxy, and creative concrete. I found a listing. Tony's Tough Coatings. We coat anything. Garages, warehouses, basements. No job too weird. I called the number. Tony's Coatings, this is Tony, a voice rasped. It sounded like he gargled with gravel. Tony, I have a weird job. It's a pool. I don't paint pools, buddy. The chlorine eats the sealant. No, I don't want to paint it. I want to fill it with clear epoxy to the brim. There was a long silence on the other end. Like a giant paperweight? Exactly. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Tony arrived in a van that had seen better decades. He was a short, stocky guy with forearms the size of hams and a permanent layer of white dust on his clothes. He walked into the backyard, looked at the empty pool, looked at the pallet of sand and seashells I had delivered, and lit a cigarette. So, Tony said, exhaling smoke, you want to make a fake ocean? Yes. You know how much resin this is going to take? We're talking tankers, Mike. Tankers. You got to buy this stuff in bulk drums. It's going to cost you the price of a new kitchen. I don't care about the money, I said. I care about the principle. I explained the HOA situation. I told him about Brenda. I told him about the fish pit rejection. Tony's expression changed. He went from a skeptical contractor to a co-conspirator. A grin spread across his face. So, Tony said, flicking his cigarette. This lady, she hates water. Hates it. But she can't ban plastic? Nope, it's a solid surface. Tony laughed. It was a deep, villainous belly laugh. I love it. I hate HOAs. My HOA fined me for having a commercial vehicle in my own driveway. I had to park this van 3 blocks away for a year. Let's do it. We sat at my kitchen table and planned the logistics. This wasn't just pouring glue in a hole. It was engineering. We can't pour it all at once, Tony explained, drawing on a napkin. Epoxy cures by chemical reaction. Part A mixes with Part B. That reaction creates heat. If you pour 5 feet of this stuff at once, the core temp will hit like 400 degrees. It'll boil, it'll crack. It might even melt your pool liner or start a fire. So we do layers? Layers, Tony nodded. We do the sand bed first. Use a bonding agent to freeze the sand in place so it doesn't float. Then we arrange your shells and driftwood. Then we do a seal coat, maybe 2 inches. Let it tack up. Then we do the deep pours, 6 inches at a time. It'll take 3 days of continuous work. Can we add dye? I asked. I want it to get darker as it gets deeper, like the real ocean. Easy, Tony said. We use a translucent blue pigment. Drop by drop. Deep end is navy blue, shallow end is Caribbean turquoise. It's gonna look sick. When can you start? I need to order the chemicals. Give me a week. But Mike, once this stuff sets, it sets. You're never getting this pool back. To remove this, you'd need a jackhammer and dynamite. You sure about this? I looked out the window at Brenda's house, looming over the fence. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The prep work began on a Monday. Tony brought a crew of 3 guys who looked like they had just been released from a very intense prison program. They were efficient, silent, and surprisingly artistic. We drained the pool completely. We scrubbed the liner until it was spotless. Then, the art began. We poured the sand, 2 tons of it. We raked it into dunes and ripples on the floor of the pool. It looked like the bottom of the Bahamian Sea. Then came the placement. I got in there with Tony. We placed the driftwood logs so they looked like sunken ship debris. We nestled the giant clamshells into the sand. We scattered the smaller conch shells. "It needs something else," Tony said, hands on his hips, standing in the deep end. "It's too clean." "I have an idea," I said. I ran to the garage and grabbed an old rusted bicycle I had been meaning to throw away. "Yes!" Tony yelled. We partially buried the bike in the sand in the deep end, so just the handlebars and one wheel were sticking out. It added a touch of realism, a touch of mystery. By Wednesday, the dry layout was done. It looked spectacular. Even without the resin, it looked like a drained ocean. That's when Brenda showed up. I was on the patio, admiring the view, when I heard the familiar click-clack of sensible heels on the pavement. Brenda let herself into my backyard through the side gate. "Mike," she barked. "What in God's name is happening here? I saw the trucks. Are you filling in the pool? You need a permit for demolition." "I'm not filling it in, Brenda," I said, smiling. "I'm resurfacing the bottom. Maintenance." She walked to the edge and looked down. She saw the sand. She saw the shells. She saw the rusted bike. This is a beach," she sputtered. "You are building a beach club. This is strictly prohibited. Commercial recreational facilities are not allowed in residential zones." "It's not a club, Brenda. It's art. I'm just arranging some stones." "I'm calling the police," she announced, pulling out her phone. "Unpermitted construction. Attractive nuisance. That bike is a tetanus hazard." 20 minutes later, Officer Miller rolled up for the first time. He walked into the backyard, adjusted his sunglasses, and looked into the empty pool. "Okay," Miller said. "It's sand. And shells?" "Officer, she's hysterical," I said. "I am simply engaging in hardscaping. I am preparing the surface for a coating. Is there a law against putting sand in my own pool?" Miller looked at Brenda. "Ma'am, is he making noise past 10 p.m.? "No, but is he burning anything?" "No, but look at it. It's tacky." Miller shrugged. "Being tacky isn't a crime, Brenda. If it was, half this town would be in jail for their lawn gnomes." Miller turned to me. "Mike, keep it down. Brenda, go home. Unless he breaks a law, stop calling 911. Brenda turned purple. She pointed a manicured nail at me. "You are up to something. I know it. And I will be watching. 1 drop of water in that thing and I'm levying the fines. $500 a day." "Don't worry, Brenda," I promised. "Not a drop of water." She stormed off. Tony popped his head up from inside the deep end. "Is she gone?" "Good. Because the tankers get here tonight." "Tonight?" "Yeah, we gotta pour at night. The sun makes the epoxy cure too fast. UV rays trigger the hardener prematurely. We start at midnight. It's gonna be a long night." This brings us back to the beginning. The Blue Inferno. The tankers arrived at 11:45 p.m. These weren't normal trucks. These were industrial chemical transport vehicles. Tony had set up a pumping system that looked like life support for a giant. Massive hoses snaked across my lawn, over the fence, and to the edge of the pool. The crew suited up. Full Tyvek, gas masks. This stuff wasn't toxic once cured, but the fumes during the liquid phase were potent. "All right, boys," Tony yelled through his mask. "Drop the base coat. Seal the sand." The pump roared to life. The first layer hissed as it hit the sand. It was a clear, thin liquid. It soaked into the sand, locking it in place immediately. It turned the white sand a darker, wet color. It looked perfect. It looked exactly like wet seabed. We let that sit for an hour. It tacked up. Okay, bring the color, Tony signaled. They switched the mix. Now a slight blue tint was added. The level began to rise. The hoses gushed thick, syrupy liquid. It moved like molasses. It crept up the sides of the pool walls, swallowing the bottom of the driftwood, encircling the shells. It was mesmerizing. It was also loud and smelly. By 1:30 a.m., we were halfway up the deep end. The heat was starting. "Temp check," Tony yelled. One of his guys pointed a laser thermometer at the pool. "We're at 180, the guy yelled back. "It's cooking." This was the steam Brenda saw. As the chemical reaction ramped up, the pool became a giant radiator. The air above it shimmered. That's when the cops arrived, leading to the standoff I described earlier. Let's revisit the moment Brenda dropped her phone. Officer Miller was looking at the pool, squinting through the chemical haze. Brenda was leaning over the fence, trying to get a picture of the toxic sludge. "It's boiling!" she screamed. "Look at the bubbles! It's acid!" She leaned too far. Her slipper slipped on the dew-covered grass. She flailed. She didn't fall in, but her hand jerked. Bloop. Her iPhone 14 Pro Max did a perfect swan dive. It landed in the deep end, right next to the rusted bicycle handlebars. It didn't splash. It just schlumped. The resin was thick. The phone sank slowly, rotating as it went down, its flashlight still on. We could see the beam cutting through the blue goo, illuminating the fake coral like a spotlight from the Titanic. "My phone!" Brenda shrieked. "Get it out! Get a net!" Tony stepped forward, his mask hanging around his neck. "Lady, that resin is currently 200 degrees and has the consistency of taffy. If I stick a net in there, the net stays. If I stick my hand in there, I lose the skin." "But it's right there," she pointed. The phone had settled onto the sand. It was perfectly upright, leaning against a conch shell. It looked like an intentional art piece. "Modern communication, lost at sea." "It's gone, ma'am," Tony said solemnly. "It belongs to the ocean now." "It's not an ocean," she screamed. "It's a pool of toxic slime." I looked at Officer Miller. "Officer, as you can see, this is not water. It is a polymer. It is a solid surface in the making. Would you like to test it?" I walked to the shallow end. The first layer there, the steps, had been poured hours ago. It was thin. It had already hardened enough to touch. I took a rock from the garden border. I tossed it onto the top step. Click. It bounced. It skittered across the surface with the sound of stone hitting hard plastic. "See?" I said. "Solid. Hardscaping." Miller watched the rock bounce. He looked at the bubbling deep end where Brenda's phone was now permanently entombed. He looked at the hose. "Is it flammable?" Miller asked. "Not anymore," Tony said. "Now that it's mixed, it's fire retardant. It's basically bulletproof glass." Miller rubbed his temples. "Brenda," he said, his voice tired. "He's pouring a floor. It's a weird floor. It's a deep floor, but it's a floor. Go home. Buy a new phone. Stop calling me." Brenda stared at her phone, glowing eerily from the bottom of the blue abyss. You haven't heard the last of this, Mike." She marched away, minus her communication device. Tony looked at me. "We gotta keep pouring. If we stop now, you'll have a seam line right across the middle. We gotta top it off before sunrise." "Pour it," I said. "Fill it to the rim." The pumps roared on. The sun came up at 6 o'clock a.m. The trucks were gone. The hoses were packed up. Tony and his crew were passed out on my lawn furniture, drinking Gatorade. I walked out the back door with a cup of coffee. It was breathtaking. The pool was full. But it wasn't water. It was a solid, glassy, perfect block of matter. The surface was dead flat, smoother than any lake could ever be. The illusion was perfect. Because the resin had cured in layers with slightly different tints, the depth perception was amplified. It looked deep. The water was a stunning azure blue. You could see every ripple in the sand at the bottom. You could see the grain on the driftwood. And there, in the deep end, perfectly preserved for all eternity, was Brenda's iPhone. The battery had died, so the light was off, but it sat there like a monolith from 2001, a space odyssey, a testament to her interference. I took off my shoes. I walked to the edge of the deep end. My brain screamed, "Danger! You will fall in!" I stepped out. My foot hovered on the surface of the water. I put my weight down. It held firm. It felt like walking on warm, smooth glass. I walked out into the middle of the pool. I stood there, suspended 8 feet above the ocean floor, hovering over the driftwood and the rusted bike. It was a godlike feeling. I was Jesus in pajama pants. I brought a lawn chair out. I placed it smack in the middle of the deep end. I sat down. From the street or from a neighbor's window, it looked like I was sitting on top of the water. It defied physics. It broke the brain. Tony woke up and wandered over. He knocked on the surface with his knuckles. Thuck, thuck. "Turned out good," he grunted. "Minimal bubbles. Clarity is 95%. That phone really ties the room together." "It's beautiful, Tony," I said. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "So what do you do now?" "Now?" I smiled. "I wait for the letter." The letter came 3 days later. Violation notice. Unapproved pool color. Illegal structure. I didn't even stress. I hired a lawyer, a guy named Saul. Not that one, but close enough. We went to the hearing. Brenda was there, looking smug. She had a new phone. "He has filled his pool with blue plastic," Brenda argued. "It is an eyesore. It is unnatural." "Actually," my lawyer interjected, sliding a piece of paper across the table, "it is a deck." "A deck?" the board members asked. "Yes. Per the International Building Code, a deck is a flat, distinctive, weight-bearing structure capable of supporting pedestrian traffic. My client's structure supports traffic. It is made of epoxy composite, a common decking material. It is under 30 inches in height from grade. Therefore, it is a permitted, permit-free patio deck." "But it's blue!" Brenda yelled. "Decks must be earth tones." "The ocean is part of the earth, Brenda," I said smoothly. "And if you look closely, the substrate is sand. Sand is an earth tone. The clear coating is just finish." The board voted. They were tired of Brenda. They were tired of the drama. They looked at the photos of the magnificent, glowing, shell-filled masterpiece. "Motion to dismiss violation," the vice president said. "It's kind of cool, actually." Brenda turned red, sputtered, and stormed out. Rumor has it she resigned the next week to move to a condo in Florida, where the HOAs are even stricter. As for me, I'm sitting here right now typing this on my laptop. I'm sitting in a lounge chair, in the middle of the deep end, hovering over a fake ocean. The sun is setting, casting orange light through the clear resin, making the seashells below glow like gold. I don't have to clean filters. I don't have to skim leaves. I just use a broom. I don't have to worry about pH levels. I just have my zen. And if I look straight down, between my feet, I can see Brenda's phone. I like to think that if it ever rings, it's just the universe calling to say, "Nice job, Mike."